All right, everyone, welcome back into another NBA DFS video. Got a small little 8-game, I shouldn't say small little 8-game slate, but got a little 8-game slate here for you guys. First and foremost, Chuck, how was your night? Did you have enough DeAndre Jordan and Reggie Jackson yesterday?
Yeah, I played all the Reggie Jackson and DeAndre Jordan on DraftKings, and then all the Reggie Jackson on FanDuel. And I actually capped DeAndre Jordan at 60%. Turned out to be a mistake because I wanted to fit in Embiid, and I even had a note in the Discord Q&A: be careful with DeAndre Jordan on FanDuel because we only get to play one center. If he met his industry projection, which was mid-20s, then we probably still want Embiid if he put up a 65-point game, which he did, I believe, but he lost fourth quarter run because the Lakers' worst loss of LeBron's career. It's kind of weird.
Really? I didn't know that.
But Reggie Jackson, DeAndre Jordan, yeah, they were Shaq and Kobe last night, and so DeAndre Jordan was very underowned, and this is something like a lot of times these min-price guys end up in the starting lineup, and the field is kind of nervous to get there. But just reviewing the top pros exposures, like they were all very overexposed to DeAndre Jordan, and so. Sometimes it's going to work out, sometimes it's not. But when it does work out, it's just, it's tournament winning and you kind of have to have him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And yesterday I kind of on the live stream, I saw I was going to be on him in like 50%. I only played 4 lineups, which the reasoning was correct, I would say, like, because I really like Jalen Duren. I really like Embiid. I wanted to kind of prioritize getting those two as well. But in the other two, I had like 353, I think was the lineup I had on DraftKings, so it was very close to taking down a GPP, and that was a slight variation from the kind of lineup process that we were doing in this live stream. So all in all, pretty good stuff there. The Occupy model killed it, and you in the Discord killed it as well. I think we all did a pretty good job again yesterday. But looking at today's slate, we were mentioning beforehand, not too much injury news in terms of value opening up injury news. Right now, to me, I think we should probably just start out with, let's just say, the Miami Heat situation, and then we'll move on from there. So looking at Miami, right now we know that Jimmy Butler is out. And so chalk-wise, Kyle Lowry's kind of pulling in as chalk. You got Highsmith pulling as chalk. Jamal Cain as chalk as well. Or sorry, I had it flipped. This makes more sense. It's Jaime Jaquez, Caleb Martin, Kyle Lowry, and then Josh Richardson. My initial thoughts were I wanted to be on Jaquez a lot. What are your kind of initial thoughts here?
Yeah, I think Jaquez is showing up pretty close to the top of value on both sites. DraftKings in particular, FanDuel, it's a little bit, I think his price is a little bit higher over there. Yeah, it's $6K, and it's reflected in ownership, but I mean, his usage has been high. That minutes limit that he was on earlier in the season is not a thing anymore. And he's been actually one of the best rookies, like steal for the Miami Heat. I don't know how they keep finding these guys, but like looking at my DraftKings lineups, I mean, it's just filled with Heat. Kyle Lowry, Caleb Martin, Jaime Jaquez, a little bit of Josh Richardson, a little bit of Kevin Love. I didn't quite get to Bam, but I think that's due to the other center choices we'll get to later, namely Alperen Sengun.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then any love for those two that I kind of mentioned on accident, like Highsmith, really, where he's pulling in as a decent value play, at least on DraftKings, coming in at low ownership?
Yeah, I don't mind him. The other guys are definitely the priorities. But I mean, Highsmith, he's been known to be a very, very boomer bust guy, and coming in at the 3% ownership on DraftKings, 4,300, I think is great. On FanDuel, I don't think he's necessary. He's not going to pull any ownership, but if you're making 150 and you want to get there a couple of shares, I don't think that's bad either. And I do want to mention Duncan Robinson is actually one of the better value plays on FanDuel. He's showing up as clearly the best value play from the Heat, and he's pulling some ownership. And then over on DraftKings, his price is a little bit higher. He's showing up as a really good value play too. He's supposed to play today, so I think that he's a good player to mix in. I think the field is mostly going to get to those top guys that we talked about: Jaime Jaquez, Caleb Martin, Kyle Lowry, just due to pricing. But Duncan Robinson, I mean, he has a pretty high usage when he's on the court, especially without Jimmy Butler, without Tyler Herro. So.
Yeah, honestly, I think that's way too low on FanDuel. I think that may be a situation where he's been questionable the whole day, and I think it'll come up. And obviously, the Jimmy Butler news didn't break too early, so I don't think it's adjusted enough. Maybe it gets to 25% there on FanDuel, because that's like, to me, that's a clear cut misprice. At least I know it's an 8-game slate, but
yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that his ownership stays low because he's among my most exposed players, especially over on FanDuel right now. So I'm all for it if he stays under 20.
Real quickly, we got some questions coming in from Jose, who's always in here. Let's just answer those real quick. So, right now, I will say Jaquez is in my core. He's just kind of asking about the core. Do you have anyone else that you instantly were gaining on other than him, potentially?
Yeah, you heard me mention Sengun, and I was asking if Sengun's my favorite center. Without any adjustment, Sengun was showing up in way too many of my lineups. I think the field's going to be there tonight, though. But I think he's a really good chalk center, so I don't think we have to get away from him, especially on DraftKings. We can play two. So it's basically Sengun, the Heat, and then I'm getting a lot of Knicks guys, and I think we want to mix in some Charlotte guys too with LaMelo Ball out.
Yeah, I would agree. So yeah, that's a good segue into the Charlotte kind of news here as well. So we know that LaMelo Ball is going to be out in this game, and so with that, I was surprised that someone like Terry Rozier wasn't coming in as chalky. And I guess it's going to be the matchup with the Knicks. People are a little bit concerned. Also, I was a little bit surprised that Brandon Miller was not coming in as too much chalk, and I get he might not be as appealing. It might just be a situation where everyone's just looking at Miles Bridges to potentially continue to do what he's doing, and then maybe Mark Williams, but he's coming in low owned. Is there anyone here that you see as like a need to roster type play?
I don't like if you're making one lineup. I don't know if any one player is a like you got to play this guy, but I think you want someone from this team. Looking at the usage without LaMelo Ball on the court, and it's still a fairly small sample size, especially regarding Miles Bridges since he's only been back a few games. But it's basically Brandon Miller gets the biggest usage bump, followed by Miles Bridges, and then a little bit later, well, Nick Smith is in there too, but I don't know if he's relevant on today's slate. I don't even know if he's even playing. And then Gordon Hayward gets a slight usage bump. I was kind of surprised Terry Rozier didn't see much of an increased usage without LaMelo, but
Is that with Bridges on the court?
It's just LaMelo off the court, period. So it could be Miles Bridges having to do with it. But like I said, like Miles Bridges has played very few minutes without LaMelo in 4 games, about 10 minutes a game. And putting Miles Bridges on the court, Terry Rozier does see a good usage bump. But even then, it actually boosts Brandon Miller even more. So I think we should be interested in all of these guys. Just mix them up.
He might be my kind of lower owned play that I get on a little bit more as Brandon Miller, because I do think he could present GPP winning upside in it. He might be just going a little bit overlooked, just kind of at a strange price tag, I'll say. But love the multiple position eligibility there for him with the shooting guard, small forward eligibility there. I know I kind of mentioned pre-show that I was looking at Ish Smith early on today as like a value option, assuming that Ball was going to be out, hoping that I could pivot off of him to get better value. Is 18 minutes enough for him to potentially give us at least 18 or so fantasy points? And this is more of a question on DraftKings where he's 3.7, or is that something where we'd probably need to see it get to 23 minutes to maybe consider him?
I don't hate it. Looking at the rotation after LaMelo Ball left in the second half, Ish Smith played, 5 minutes plus 3 minutes. He got 8 minutes of playing time total in the second half without LaMelo Ball. Bryce McGowan's was in there too. I think they're comfortable just running Terry Rozier at the point though. And so even if Ish Smith is in the starting lineup at 3,700, we really don't have that many true pay ups that we're super interested in today, especially with the Heat value. I don't think Ish Smith is necessary today, but it could be a situation where if he's playing really well, then maybe he just stays on the court a little bit longer. Yeah. And as long as the field isn't trying to get there, I don't taking a couple shots on him if he makes your lineups work.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's initially, guys, like we don't have that many good plays sub 4K on this slate. Is there any other injury spots that is really worthwhile, or do you want to get into guards?
So with Boston, Derek White, it sounds like he's going to play today. Drew Holiday was still questionable. Haywood Highsmith actually just got ruled out right now. So that opens up a little bit more for, I guess, Caleb Martin, Jaime Jaquez possibly.
Robinson, I think, just becomes a better play instantly. Maybe Kevin Love gets a few more minutes.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like Highsmith doesn't really take up that much usage, but if it gets Kevin Love a few more minutes, then that's great for Kevin Love. He's also going to be a good, contrarian value play from that team. And then, so Derek White and Drew Holiday are both confirmed in for today too. So the Boston value, I think Porzingis was already ruled out, but Al Horford being only a center makes it kind of difficult. But I still think he's fine as a GPP play.
Yeah, I will say I do like Derek White. I hate the price tag though. It's definitely tough to get to. I could see him still getting to around 35 fantasy points on both sites, but probably a little bit too thin, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of reflected in the ownership, right? Increased price tag. Drew Holiday's back on the court, and I think last time I did mention like I didn't love Derek White that day. Of course, he ended up going off, being in the tournament
Yeah.
winning lineup. But I mean, Boston. So I've talked about Chicago Bulls are not a team that I love targeting guys against just because of the pace of the game, and I don't know that anyone from Boston is like a must-have. They're all kind of just GPP flyers to me.
Is Drew Holiday potentially too cheap though? We got a comment saying that he's not going to have his minutes restricted, which is good. Is there a potential he could give us 45 tonight, or is that just too thin as well at the price tag?
I think he always has that potential. I do think it's slightly less playing against the Chicago Bulls. Not that the
Mhm.
Bulls are good; it's just the way that the pace of the game is going to end up going. But at this low ownership, I don't mind taking shots on any of these guys. I just don't think that any of them should be a big part of what we're doing today.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then just real quickly in passing, Chris Middleton's still currently a game time decision. Jay Crowder is still out. I would say if Chris Middleton sits, maybe Beasley's someone that we're potentially looking at. Toronto, nothing too much. Let's talk about Brooklyn real quick because we got news earlier today that Nick Claxton's going to be playing, and I do like him at his price tag, and he's not coming in over-owned. They're still going to be without Ben Simmons, and then also Cam Thomas. Do you have any love for Nick Claxton now he's active in this game?
Yeah, just a general note about centers today. There's a ton of low-owned centers. This is definitely a two-center day on DraftKings, and Nick Claxton's one of them. The field's going to be on. Pretty sure Sengun is going to be like the mega chalk center today. I think he's going to come in even higher than we're projecting. So any of these low-owned centers look great. And Nick Claxton, even if he only plays less, just under 30 minutes, he's been a pretty good fantasy producer. And the other guy on Brooklyn I wanted to mention was Cameron Johnson. He's pulling some ownership, but I think his price is a little bit too cheap. When he's getting his full run, he's over a fantasy point per minute guy. He lost minutes in the last game. I'm not quite sure why. I'm not sure if maybe he got hurt in that previous game or just foul trouble like he likes to get in, whatever. But Cam Johnson's been fantastic when he's getting 35 plus minutes. So just hope for that 35 plus minutes tonight. And I think he's a pretty good play.
Did you do any best ball coverage today by chance or no?
I did not. No.
I those are two players that I went in on, and thankfully they're ruled in. So fingers crossed that they have a good day today.
Love that.
Yeah, I do. Let's just pull up Sengun as well, just in general, because I don't really want to bury the lead. This is the news and notes section, so this is more noteworthy. He is pulling in his chalk. I would say his value rating and the OF index, I mean, it's not as high as I typically would like. All in all, though, I feel like he's a good play in this matchup against Dallas. I think that's something that we're going to be targeting a bunch this season. Maybe not as much as Portland or Washington or whatnot, but kind of right up there. What are your thoughts on him? Is he properly owned? Is he someone you're going out of your way? Or going to be overweight, underweight? Kind of what are your initial thoughts there?
So I do think he's probably properly owned, but I am in the builds that I have right now. I'm well over the field on both sites on him on that 26 and 36%. But on that note, with the OF index and DK value, I want to point out like we have a lot of good centers today, but Brook Lopez is really standing out as a good low owned play on DraftKings in particular. So we'll get into centers a little bit more later.
I will say I do think Brooke would be a better play as well if Middleton's out. I don't know if we have any like actionable information to go off of that. It seems to be one less mouth to feed. Chris Middleton has a high usage rate, and I think it's one other player that you take off that would just help Brooke a little bit.
Yeah, and just like I mentioned, like every center that's coming in at low ownership, I think is in play. So
let's actually we'll start with centers here. Our Brooklyn Nets insider Nick is telling us that Cam Johnson left last game with cramps. So all in all, kind of a fluky injury. We shouldn't have to worry about that too much.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's start with the centers. Kind of switching it. So right now the chalk at center is going to be Sengun on both sides, pulling in a little bit higher owned on FanDuel, which I find kind of fascinating. You could probably make some pivots there. But then we got Mitchell Robinson, who's just a little bit too cheap considering the matchup. Mobley and then Allen, the Cleveland Bigs are right there. I really like Julius Randle. I like him a lot more on FanDuel. Malcolm Pirtle's pulling in a little bit. I think Kevin Love's ownership is going to skyrocket. But yeah, Brook Lopez coming in low owned as one of the best DK values. Like you mentioned. And then we have like Nick Claxton in there. Even Chet Holmgren has a good value. Mark Williams, who's been crushing lately, is not pulling in too much ownership because he's priced up. Yeah, there are a lot of center plays like you just mentioned. I know we mentioned Brook and Sengun. What are your other thoughts at this position tonight?
So this dude Chet Holmgren is showing up pretty close to the top of OF Index, and he's the fourth best DK value on the board today, coming in at 2% ownership. I think he's a great play. I mean, he's a lot better than I thought he was going to be. I think in my preseason best ball streams, I said I wasn't touching him, and he completely proved me wrong. His usage is great. Somehow he's the second best player on this Thunder team,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know, at this low ownership. Something about playing Minnesota, like we're not worried about Chet Holmgren ever really getting played off the court anyway, but they need Chet Holmgren to play as many minutes as he can handle tonight. The Minnesota is the
Mm-hmm.
largest team in the NBA, and so at 2% ownership, especially he's a little bit cheaper than Sengun. I think he's a really really strong GPP pivot.
Is there any realm of possibility where he gets into foul trouble and you're looking at the Jalen with a Y Williams to get maybe 20 fantasy points? I don't know. I think that could be within the realm of possibility, but probably don't want to bank on that tonight. I'm guessing.
On a lot of other slates, I would be interested in Jalen
Yeah.
Williams for sure, but I just think there's way too many other good centers today that I really don't want to, pay down at center. I want to stay in this mid range to high range center, I think, for today. We have enough value at the other positions.
Mm-hmm. So I mentioned Julius Randle as a play on FanDuel. Obviously, he's a power forward there, and on DraftKings. I don't know. I like him. Is he maybe slightly too priced up on DraftKings at 8.7, or is it probably correct?
I feel like this DraftKings price is probably close to correct, but I still like getting to him. I ended up with 30% in my pre-stream build on DraftKings, and then on FanDuel, he's one of my highest exposed players. So I love Julius Randle today. And Mitchell Robinson also, bigs against Charlotte is still a thing, even with Mark Williams starting. So like both of those guys.
Yeah, he's pulling as a pretty good value. What I'm surprised by is Rudy Gobert is not coming in too chalk, and I guess it makes sense, but given the price discrepancy between DraftKings and FanDuel, that's where I'm a little bit shocked. 66 on DraftKings, 7.4 on FanDuel. Is that just a situation where probably on FanDuel a little bit too high priced, whereas DraftKings probably correctly priced, and given the amount of good center plays, no need to force him in there?
Yeah, I think he feels kind of cheap for DraftKings, right? The
Yeah.
6,600 price sounds really good to me. I was kind of surprised that I wasn't getting to. Oh, actually, I'm getting to a ton of Gobert over on DraftKings. I take that back.
Okay. Yeah, he's been struggling, I guess, lately, but honestly, I know Holmgren gets a lot of blocks and steals and whatnot, but you can also kind of have your way with him right now. So it's either you're going to feast on him or he's going to have a lot of blocks and steals, Holmgren. So I don't mind it. Initial thoughts on Bam as well. I know we probably don't want to pay up for him. I don't think the OF Index likes him too much. Fourth best center play. So at his price, they probably a little bit too priced up. But what are your kind of thoughts on him with Jimmy Butler out?
At low ownership, I don't mind getting to him. I think be a little bit careful if you're playing 3 to 4 Heat in your lineup. Just I don't know, because I think it's fine to play 3 Heat in a lineup, and then if we're throwing Bam in there, it just gets a little bit weird. And I think Bam actually projects pretty well today. It's just that we have so many other better center plays, I guess. But Bam's still a GPP play.
And I'm just looking at this board for both FanDuel and DraftKings. It seems to be a slate in which we could potentially fit like 4 centers, at least on DraftKings, into our builds, where obviously they have multiple position eligibility, where Evan Mobley, Randall, maybe Towns. It's just, it seems like a pretty good slate. Al Horford on DraftKings. So definitely interesting in that regard.
Yeah, I love that. And, we always talk about if you're playing, I think this is for sure a 2-center night. If you're playing one of the guys with power forward eligibility, I think that, like you said, like we can just fit in 3 to 4 like centers. And not that Julius Randle's a center, but he does have the eligibility. But try to keep him in your power forward spot so you can get 2 true centers tonight.
Yep. And then we got a comment saying that Chris Middleton is in. So I will say that does make me like Brooke a little bit less. At the same time, I mean, Brooke's been crushing it more defensively. The data loves him. I mean, this is a good spot where you can jump on him, get some huge leverage. And honestly, if it doesn't work out, I feel like you're just like kind of on to the next one type situation. Maybe you don't need to go crazy with it. I guess with the model, really like him, especially on DraftKings, where he's obviously significantly too cheap there. How much higher owned would you try to get, or is 5% correct there?
I want to be over the 5% on Brooke Lopez for sure. I guess I didn't make enough adjustments in my pre-stream run. I didn't really get much. But it's kind of interesting how high he is on the FanDuel value as well. Unless I misread that, did I?
It's still decent. I probably need to refresh on my end as well.
Oh no, I misread it. I thought he was at 14, but at 0%, I mean the price is definitely too high on FanDuel. But
Yeah.
I mean, if he has a 7 block game, like we're not predicting that, but he's been fantastic recently. So
Yeah, I mean, part of that is due to Portland, Washington, and then also Dallas. He kind of had dud against them, and he had Charlotte as well. But mixed in there was Boston, where he had 43. And if he gives us 43 tonight, we'd be definitely happy at that 6.1 price tag that we have there. But with that, let's go ahead and get into the forward, or let's go into the guards real quick. Forwards, we don't need to spend as much time on. I don't think we have any questions, so give me a second to pivot here. And then here we go. So looking at it right now, in terms of value, Brandon Miller is pulling in as one of the best values. Now Duncan Robinson as well. That might be something that adjusts. Obviously, those two players, at least on DraftKings, are multiple position eligibility type plays. I think those are actually two pretty good starting points tonight at pretty low ownership, and then maybe we can eat the chalk elsewhere. What are your initial thoughts there?
yeah, I think I'm getting to a bunch of Brandon Miller. I'm getting to a bunch of Duncan Robinson. Can you refresh the model? Actually, I just refreshed, and we're seeing Jamal Cain as the top DK value, which I'm kind of excited about because he's min priced, and with Drew Smith out for the season, he's in line for a few more minutes.
Yeah.
Despite him not being a point guard, we've known that he can be a good fantasy points per minute guy, and he's min priced. He lets us do stuff with our lineup. So
that's hilarious that I messed that up at the top, and now he's coming in as the best value. I don't mind Josh Richardson as well. I think I would like him obviously a lot more if we were getting news that Kyle Lowry was not playing, but he's going to play. Kyle Lowry's actually pulling in his chalk, and let's just sort it by projected chalk. It's Caleb Martin now. It's actually Darius Garland, Kyle Lowry, Jalen Green, Fred VanVleet, Josh Richardson, and then quickly pulling in as kind of chalk as well. I'm actually a little bit confused. So what's going on with the Garland chalk? What's going on with Fred VanVleet chalk? What's going on with the quickly chalk?
Yeah, the Garland chalk, it just got to be a price thing, right? 7,200. It is a high pace game against Atlanta, so I understand that a little bit. Total's 238.5. We don't mind that total. It's very good. And then Jalen Green is actually the one that confuses me too. I hate playing this guy when he's chalk because it kind of feels like we're just holding hands with the field, hoping that he has a great scoring night. And so I'd rather try to get away from Jalen Green. Darius Garland, for some reason, I have a tough time getting to like every slate when Donovan Mitchell's in. And so kind of interested in getting away from that chalk as well. And then you mentioned Josh Richardson, and I'm actually on the other side of that. I would prefer, again, he's coming around 20% owned on DraftKings. He's a guy that I would prefer to get away from. I just think that comparing his ownership to the chances of him putting up a ceiling game, I think he's a little bit too owned, and I'd rather just go to the other Miami guys.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I think that was part of my hesitation, I guess, with Jalen Green a little bit as well. Like you're really hoping for that ceiling game, and I guess it's easier to just get to Kane, honestly, and then probably Jaquez for Miami at least, and then Duncan Robinson probably too.
And then Emmanuel Quickly, 5,300, 5,600 off the bench against Charlotte. Now, it's a 12-point spread, so we're getting into blowout territory, but I don't agree with this either. I would rather just pay up and get to Jalen Brunson.
Or just pay down, potentially to the other place. Yeah, that's weird. And maybe it's just a little bit of a matchup bias. Like we've seen a lot of the matchups lately really pay off if you were chasing the matchups. Or maybe it's just a little bit of the blowout. People are hoping that gets a little bit of run. It's weird. And just for example purposes, one of my better builds yesterday, I pretty much just stacked Portland and who the heck were they playing? Anyways, it was like a 12-point spread, and they end up winning. And so, like, again, like we typically don't like to bank on a blowout. I feel like that's what people are trying to bank on there. So it's kind of strange, I think.
Yeah, and if we do think it's a blowout, if you're hand building, it's still fine to play the New York guys because they're the ones that are doing well if Charlotte's getting blown out.
Let's talk about Brunson just real quick because sorry to cut you off there, but good price tag, good spot to your point.
He's been pretty consistent. I mean, we saw him blow up for that an 8x in the previous game against
Hmm.
Phoenix, which is he's capable of that, but he's been mostly consistent. And at this price tag, he's pulling a little bit of ownership. I guess over on FanDuel it's a little bit more, but I don't mind getting to Jalen Brunson, just like I don't mind getting to Julius Randle. I
Hmm.
don't really love playing them both in the same lineup. I didn't set a rule for it. I didn't go through and see how many lineups I'm getting with both of them, but just intuitively, it kind of feels like we don't want both of them.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I do think RJ Barrett's just, I know he's a forward, but I do think he's due for a better game. He might be a little bit still priced up, but he's just shot the ball terribly over his last couple of games. And they've also been more difficult matchups against Charlotte. We have 2 games into this. One game terrible, another game 37 fantasy points. So it might be a little bit too thin, but again, if you said you might not want to be playing both of them together, then I would say probably RJ Barrett might be the reason as to why both of
So
them don't have good nights.
I just feel like I want to fade every piece of chalk tonight because, again, it's kind of the same situation as Jalen Green. Like, if we're holding
Uh,
hands with the field trying to chase RJ Barrett having a really good game, I'd rather get to someone else. Like, don't fade. Like, I have these guys in my exposures, but I don't want to be there as much as the field is.
Real quick, we got a question here: Brandon Miller or Duncan Robinson? I'm actually very curious as to your thoughts there.
I think they're both great plays. I think with this one, I doubt you have a Milwaukee guy in there. If you have a New York Knick in your lineup, then probably Brandon Miller, or depending on how many other Miami guys you have in there, how many other Charlotte guys you have in there. If that's the only piece you're getting from that team, I'd probably just go with them. But I think they're both great plays. I'm going to be over the field on both of them.
I mean, both of them are very much a little bit shot dependent, right? Like you're just kind of betting on which one doesn't have an extremely cold night shooting.
Yeah, and then Brandon Miller's a rookie. We know that Duncan Robinson is on this massive contract. He's been here for a bit, so he's been looking a lot better recently, though. So they're both good plays. Happy to
Yeah.
have you there.
And then we have another question here. Jakob Pearl in play today. He was the center that we didn't mention. I don't know. It feels like a GPP only type play.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised he's pulling 10% ownership on DraftKings. I feel like I'd rather just play Brooke Lopez or go down to Mitchell Robinson or pay up for Sengun or any other center.
Yeah, I think it's honestly just the price difference there, where he's clearly just too high priced on FanDuel, and DraftKings he's correctly priced. So I think that could potentially be it. Were there any other guard plays that you wanted to touch on here, or should we move on to forwards?
I just want to make sure we already talked about Terry Rozier a little bit, but I
Yeah.
do think he's a really good play on DraftKings. His price is cheaper than he is on FanDuel. Max Struess, his price is a little bit too high, but he is showing up near the top of value on both sites. Just keep him in mind if it's only a 150 max play. And then Mike Conley, I mentioned on the previous stream that I just hate playing this guy, but he's pulling modest ownership today. I don't hate it. And then kind of similar to Kyle Lowry. Kyle Lowry's pulling a ton of ownership. And his price, I think he's fine.
Is that just Butler being out to get to match up with Dame? Like people are hoping for that.
Yeah, and it's like Bam Adebayo's in, so Kyle Lowry is not going to have the usage that he has when Bam's out. But I mean, at 5K, it just feels like we want 20, like we're hoping for 25 points to 30 points from Kyle Lowry, right? And it's rare. He could have that monster game, but again, similar to the other guys, I don't want to really chase it when the rest of the field is getting there. And then Tanner in the chat, Malik Monk. Yeah, me and Eric and I were talking about Malik Monk before the stream, and for some reason, Malik Monk showed up in almost every FanDuel lineup that I have, and then he's showing up a lot on DraftKings too. Now he's a little bit too cheap on FanDuel, but again, dude, I'm fading everyone tonight. If this is a chalk piece, I don't want to get there as much as the field. Now Malik Monk, I think I'll be a little bit more just due to the price on FanDuel, and then DraftKings. I guess his ownership's only 11%. That's not too bad.
This is actually just like a pretty funny slate compared to I would say yesterday's. Like yesterday, I like you weren't fading the chalk because you thought it was bad chalk. You were fading the chalk because you thought you had better plays elsewhere, or at least that's what I was doing. I think that's what me and Nick were saying. And now this one, we are saying like, yeah, these are probably too high owned tonight because they're not good plays. It's not comfortable though. That's for
no, this is a night where I either have a bunch of lineups at the top or a bunch of lineups just out of the cash. So it's we ride the variance. So I'm comfortable taking the risk. So if you are too, I think that we just want to get away from some of these guys we talked about.
And the nice thing about some of the chalk, at least today, is that they're not, at least some of the plays are not showing up too well in the model as well, which that does make me feel a little bit better. It's not like we're taking crazy pills over here. But let's go ahead and move on into the forwards here. Let's just start with the chalk there, see if we love the chalk here or not. So Jaquez, I think we both agree we're okay with that. Caleb Martin probably has price tag. I think we'd both be okay with that. RJ Barrett, yeah, a little bit too shot dependent. Grant Williams, probably a little bit too cheap. But actually, what are your thoughts on Grant Williams? Like 20 fantasy points, 25 fantasy points, at least on both sides. I feel like he could be in play, actually.
So I love Grant Williams as a GPP play when he's coming in at low ownership. I think the 2% ownership on FanDuel at 4,600, it's a fine play. I'm going to have more than the 2%. 18% on DraftKings isn't too bad. He is a little bit too cheap at 4K. I don't mind him, especially I'm going to have a Houston guy or two in a lot of my lineups. So
yeah, it's one of those Houston guys, Jabari Smith, who's pulling in as a pretty chalky, I shouldn't say pretty chalky, but 16% owned on at least DraftKings.
yeah, I mean, Sengun is probably going to end up being my highest owned player overall today. But Jabari Smith is not too far behind. I'm getting a ton of him over on DraftKings, especially. And Fred VanVleet, I'm getting a ton of over on FanDuel. So maybe I need to adjust some things, get a little bit more Fred VanVleet on DraftKings. But I do like all of these players.
So I'm trying to look at it just real quick. Was Eason or Tate out the last couple of games? Because they're both questionable. It doesn't look like it. So I was just trying to see why Jabari Smith randomly started to get a little bit more run. And we've seen 38, 27. That game was a blowout. And then 32, 32, 33. So he's been getting 30 minutes. And let's see what he's projected to get here that we have him for. 31. So are we just like, all right, he's getting those minutes. We've seen it, 4 out of the last 5 games. Are okay with banking on that?
Yeah, let me double check to see. So Tari Eason and Jayshawn Tate were actually both in the last game. So it does look like they've been running a short rotation. They only played 4 guys off the bench, Aaron Holiday, Tate, Eason, and Jeff Green. So
Yeah.
not quite sure what's going on over in Houston. But so we love the minutes for Jabari Smith, but he's only taking like 10 to 12 shots a game still, even 9 in the last game. So we don't love that. And I like him today, but it's a little bit worrying.
I do want to collect your thoughts on kind of the Atlanta bigs, if you will. I know it's a tough matchup against Cleveland. There's probably a little bit of the potential for foul trouble. Bogdanovich is someone I think at his price tag has GPP upside. Bay, I really think is a decent GPP play. And then DeAndre Hunter, I know he had a really awesome game, kind of got priced up. But I feel like all 3 of those plays are pretty good GPP plays. And if you look at the minutes, it goes Hunter most minutes, then Bay, then Bogdanovich. So I don't know. I feel like I'm just a little bit shocked at the ownership. I kind of thought it would be flipped. It's just weird.
So 2 games ago, DeAndre Hunter was one of my locks when he was coming in like 11 or 15% owned on both sides. And now he's coming in at 1 and 3%. He's priced up a little bit, but I mentioned like without Jalen Johnson in the lineup, it's just so much more usage to go around. I know that Trey's on the court. I know DeJounte's on the court, but it really benefits DeAndre Hunter a lot. And in the last game, maybe he was also helped because Sadiq Bey got into early foul trouble. He lost a few minutes, but I mean, 40 minutes for DeAndre Hunter. If he has the potential to play 40 minutes at 1% owned, I'm very comfortable paying 6K and 5.8K for him. I mean, we have projected for 35 minutes. This is probably my favorite low-owned GPP play of the day. Now, I'm not going to go crazy on him like I did in the last slate, but I am going to be well over this 1 and 3%.
You're stressing me out because I'm agreeing with all your fades and your low on plays right now. So it's either going to be like we're both either going to have a good night or terrible night. Oh, jeez. But yeah, what about Bay? So is that just a thing where maybe we play Hunter to get some leverage, or maybe we play Bay to get some leverage, hoping that, I shouldn't say hoping, but like maybe one of them gets into foul trouble against Cleveland and then the other steps up and does play more minutes?
Even if they're both on the court, as long as Sadiq Bey's in the starting lineup, I mean, we haven't projected for 30 minutes. I think that's great. His ownership seems fine. His price is good. And this is a player we know that can put up a good fantasy score. It's kind of interesting how high Bogdanovich is owned today at 57 and 5,800. We've seen this guy play some pretty good minutes off the bench, but he hasn't really been doing much except scoring recently. And so I think I would prefer just getting to Sadiq Bey and DeAndre Hunter, but I don't mind mixing in Bogdan a little bit.
Yeah, and just kind of to cap it off, like that game is a game that is supposed to be higher scoring, so it's kind of a unique way to get some exposure to it. And I think that's probably what I should have started with. We saw some other players in this game, Darius Garland, for example, pulling in as chalk, where I think a lot of that is just due to the game total. where you can get kind of unique and go with like Hunter, who's very low owned, basically for those same reasons, basically hoping for a ceiling game.
I feel like Trey and DeJounte are fine GPP plays too. Like Trey's finally playing like Trey Young we expect. His price is way up there, but his ownership is also way down. And then DeJounte's pulling basically no ownership, and I think his price is probably appropriate. So I don't mind getting to either of those two guys a little bit.
Yeah, I actually like that call on DeJounte. Just probably at what he would average. You know, he's typically going to give you 5x, maybe 5.5x at that price tag. If he has a really good game, obviously could easily get, I don't know, 50 fantasy points there. It's not too terrible of a matchup, so I don't mind that call. Let's take a peek at the rest of the forwards that we have. We kind of mentioned Cameron Johnson in passing. He's at a cheap price tag. Only pulling in 16, 15% owned, projected to get 32 minutes. Does seem to be like maybe like an easy click to start out your builds. And then maybe if you have other options, you could adjust, but he feels like a safe click, I should say.
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed. The model doesn't think much more of him, but it doesn't think he's bad. And the ownership 15 and 16%. I think that's fine. Cameron Johnson, pretty good. I don't know if he's core, but he's right there if he's not in the core.
Mm-hmm. And let's just actually take a peek at what the model likes the most. On the top end, it's obviously Giannis, then Tatum, then Randall, then Miles Bridges. And if he's going to be the fourth best play and kind of a pretty good edge considering his price tag compared to everyone else, if he's coming in at 8%, that does seem to be a big edge. And then you look at someone that's kind of following that same theme, looking at the pricing, you got Evan Mobley at 7.6. That also seems to be maybe a potential big edge, but he's pulling in some chalk there. And then we go down, we got Duncan Robinson, Brandon Miller, and then Jaquez. What are your kind of thoughts there on Miles Bridges? 8%, 10%?
I'd rather play Miles Bridges than Evan Mobley today. I mean, maybe it's chasing a little bit, but this guy's been so consistently good since he's come back from his time off.
Can I say a terrible take that I don't want to say? Like, it's like, if it wasn't for the reason why he has been playing, would he be like the top candidate for comeback player of the year right now?
Oh man, he'd be up there. He didn't play last season, and now he's playing awesome. I don't even know who the other candidates would be. Like, who was even hurt last year?
I mean, Middleton maybe when he starts getting more minutes. I don't. Lillard too as well, probably, who just didn't play. It's tough to say.
Yeah, that's. I agree with you that it's for the wrong reasons, but he's been. I'm honestly shocked how well he's able to just come back and continue what he was doing before he missed time.
It's crazy, and they just let him loose too. That's what's also a little bit crazy to me. Typically, you just don't see that.
37 minutes. I mean, great.
What sucks though is someone like Gordon Hayward was someone we were looking at a lot this season, and he is someone where he has his price dip, and also PJ Washington for that matter. The model really doesn't like either of them as plays, even on FanDuel where he's 5.7 is a decent value play. They're coming in at 35% owned is Gordon Hayward. Is that a spot where you are comfortable eating the chalk, or you don't want to eat the chalk there?
So we can't fade every piece of chalk, right? I know that ownership does sound kind of high. I have a bunch of Gordon Hayward over on FanDuel, though. Gordon Hayward followed by Miles Bridges, and then Brandon Miller is my Charlotte exposure. I actually didn't get to any Terry Rozier yet. I might have to change that over on FanDuel.
It is just fascinating, though, how bad I shouldn't say bad. I'm not watching the games, but like how much Bridges seemingly being there has hurt his production. And then what about PJ Washington at all? His pricing has come down a lot. And even on FanDuel, 5.7, only 1% and 0%. Kind of gain a little bit of backup center run, 30 minutes projected. Maybe gets a little bit more run with ball off the court. We saw that last year as well. Or is it just, no, can't trust you right now?
He's a little bit too thin for me. I will say the price seems good, but it just, he really needs those backup center minutes since Miles Bridges is basically on the court the whole game.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. We did get a question here, and I was actually thinking about asking this one. Craig Porter for Cleveland, is he someone we can be looking at tonight at all, or is it just with Garland back, with everyone basically healthy for Cleveland, we don't want to be looking at him as a play?
I don't even think we don't even have projected for 10 minutes. He's not, is he showing up in the model?
I would have to see.
Yeah, I don't see him
No,
showing up when I'm filtering for Cleveland. It
there we
just
go.
yeah, with both of the guards in, it just there's no minutes for him, especially with Levert in as well. I don't think he's a play tonight at all.
Fair. I'm going to go ahead and drop the Discord plug, and then we'll get into our closing thoughts here.
And we have lock half hour later than usual today, so the Discord will be starting about 30 minutes from now.
Perfect. So yeah, guys, so we'll probably end this video a little bit later than we typically would, maybe 5-10 minutes a little bit later. And then yes, again, lineup lock is going to be a little bit later. That's typically going to be the case for the Discord chat live before lock. That's going to be 30 minutes before the main slate lock time, whereas this YouTube live stream, we're always going to be going live about the same time, but always be in there right before lineup lock, especially today where there's going to be a little bit of a gap in between the live stream and the Discord chat. If slate breaking news comes in, get that update. You see a little bit of different takes from the YouTube live stream, but also it's just like a confirmation of the thoughts from the whole day. Direct plays in there, cash plays, GPP plays, FanDuel, DraftKings. So you get you guys covered there. Link for that's going to be in the description below. But yes, let's go ahead and get into the closing thoughts for the slate. Do we want to try to give a dummy build? I feel like it's tough today because we're saying fade a lot of the chalk.
Yeah, if we give a dummy build, it's just straight up. It's not going to be the best.
I'll try just real quick. I know where I feel like I want to get a little bit unique with it. I'm going to go Bridges. I'm going to go, I think, Brandon Miller just right out the bat. Hawkes, I'm fine with.
Yep.
And then I'm going to have you close this out because I'm going to go Claxton as well. And then I kind of want your thoughts on maybe closing it out. So I got Miller, Bridges, Hawkes.
I want to go Sengun.
Okay, I like it.
And then I don't mind getting one more guy from Miami if we can fit in Duncan Robinson or Kyle Lowry or Caleb Martin. Any of the three. I'm not sure.
Not Kane?
Oh, we could fit in Kane. Yeah, let's fit in Kane. Give us a little bit more flexibility.
Yeah. And then I'd be fine with Robinson still, honestly. But
yeah, get 3 Miami guys. And this is not a spot, like, don't feel like you have to run it back with a Milwaukee buck. I mean, it's probably preferable, but really the only buck that I would want to run it back with is Brook Lopez or Giannis if you can really find the salary to get there. But there's so many good plays in this like 6 to 9K range today that it might not be necessary. And you're kind of just hoping he puts up an absolutely monster game to end up in the winning lineup.
Would you rather go with Claxton or Brook Lopez?
I guess Brook Lopez, just because we have 3 Miami guys, but even then, like I'm okay with either of them.
And then after that, we are kind of at a terrible price range for the point guard spot, which is why it sucks that Kane is not listed as a point guard. Probably a situation where maybe we'd have to rebuild here. Maybe get up to Garland, eat the chalk. Yeah, that's tough. That's tough.
Yeah,
but
and like we talk about fading the chalk, like you don't have to fade every single piece of chalk in every lineup. I'm just saying, like, these guys are still in my exposures. I'm just playing less of them than the field is.
Yeah, I mean, we still got Sengun in there, Hawkes in there. Could have went Caleb Martin instead of Kane, and maybe let's just do that real quick. And then you're at 5.3. Quickly, you can eat the chalk. Kyle Lowry, you can eat the chalk. It's not a terrible route to go then after that.
Yeah, I like it.
Okay, so kind of a decent first look build. It's kind of a unique slate, as we mentioned. What are your kind of closing thoughts for today, or we don't have any more questions? Yeah, what are your closing thoughts for today?
Just 2 guys that I think we kind of glossed over a little bit. Anthony Edwards was showing up a little bit popular, and the model thinks he's okay. He's pulling 14 and 10% ownership. It's not bad. And then Cat, it's been a guy I've been over the field on every day. I think his price is still appropriate. And so just wanted to mention those guys. I have a feeling Anthony Edwards is going to be a little bit more popular tonight. I saw him being touted as core by one of the other sites. So
yeah, that's probably just a matchup thing. Going against OKC, maybe hoping that the game is a little bit higher than the 230 over and under.
Yeah, I think so.
That's interesting there. Yeah, I would agree. I was going to mention like Jalen Williams is back. He's probably a little bit too high priced, right?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like I mean, he's going to be forgotten today. So if you mix him in a couple of shares, but if you're only making a few, I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah. And then just real quickly as well. So with the Miami value that we have here, Is it a situation where we probably want to get at least one of Hawk? Maybe let me rephrase that. At least two of Hawkes, Kane, Martin, and Robinson into our builds, potentially Kyle Lowry as well.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I didn't have to set any kinds of rules, and just scrolling through, I have 2 to 3 of those guys you just mentioned in basically every single lineup that I have on DraftKings tonight. So
Okay.
I do
I
like
think that
that.
makes sense. I think that
Yeah.
makes sense. And then just lastly, taking a peek at the ownership here. Martin, Chalk. Yeah. So the top 3 highest owned players, Martin, Hawkes, Lowry. It makes sense. And then you got Richardson, Kane as.
Yeah, so those are the chalk that I do like eating.
Mhm.
I said fade a bunch of the 20% on guys, but I don't mind the actual chalk today.
Yeah. I mean, we got Sengun in there as well now. So, yeah, I think we kind of nailed the slate. We're good. We're good.
Yeah, let's get it, guys.
All right. But yeah, guys, that's going to be it. Thank you guys for being here. Again, be in the live stream tomorrow, be in the Discord chat in about 30 minutes. That's all.